Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I made this beautiful dress that have a best sleeve and an exaggerated hip. So if this sounds like what you would like to learn, then definitely keep watching. And I'm also going to be telling you the things I would have done differently if I were to recreate this style for the second time. So without wasting much time, let's get started. So these are some of the major lines I'm going to be working with. I've gone ahead to mark it down. For those who know how to draft a basic body pattern, go ahead and draft it out. But for those who are still beginners, who are a little bit confused, I'm going to be explaining it for you. So at this top here, I have my shoulder measurements divided by 2. And for my neck width and my neck depth, I marked 3 by 3 inches. But as a plus size, I should have marked 3 by 4 inches. That would have given it a more perfect outline around the neckline. But for an average person, you can go with the 3 by 3 inches. So after that, I marked my shoulder slant, which is 1 inch, and then from the top parts, I marked my shoulder to my chest line, which is my armhole measurements divided by 2. Then I marked my shoulder to my bust line, then my shoulder to my waist. In front, I have 17 inches because I'm going to be making use of a bust that. And after that, I marked my shoulder to my hip line, which is 7 inches from my waistline. Then I also marked the length of my dress. You can decide whichever length that you want. And when I was done with that, I went ahead to connect my point, and that is what you can see here. So the next thing I'm going to do is to connect my armhole line, and then on the chest line, I'm going to mark the bust circumference divided by 4. Then I marked the middle point of my armhole. So at that point, I came in by half an inch, and then I'll go ahead to connect my front armhole curve just like this. And now that I've done that, I'm going to add my 1 inch for my sewing allowance and then connect them together. Then on the waistline, I marked the waist circumference divided by 4 plus 1 inch for my sewing allowance. So looking at it, you will see that I did not add any dart because we don't have any dart line on the dress. Then on the hip line, I marked the hip circumference divided by 4 plus 1.5 inches for my exaggerated hip. But I wished I had added just 1 inch because I had to trim out about half an inch in order for me to get a perfect curve. So after doing that, I added my sewing allowance. Then on the hemline, I minus 1 inch from the measurement I had on my hip line. Let's assume your measurement is 13 inches. That means on the hemline, you're going to be marking 12 inches. So after doing that, I went ahead to connect all the points I just marked. So the next thing I'm going ahead to do is to mark my bust dart, and to do that, I'm going to divide my nipple to nipple measurements by 2. And then on the bust line, I'm going to come down by 2 inches, which is what I have as the difference between my shoulder to my waist at the front from my shoulder to my waist at the back. So take your own measurement, and whatever you have as your difference is what you're going to be marking at this point. So I'm going to connect it to the bust point, but before I do that, I came up by half an inch or 3/4 inch, and then I connected my point. So for my front slit, I came down by 3 inches from my neckline. Then at this point, I came in by 1 line on my measuring tape. Please make sure that this place is as small as possible, because if you make it wider, it's not going to come out well. And then after, I went ahead to cut out my pattern, and that is it for the front piece. And so guys, if you know you have watched to this extent and this video is useful to you, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up because it helps this channel, and subscribe if you haven't done so. So I'm going to set the front pattern aside and cut out my back pattern. So for the back, I've gone ahead to mark my basic lines just like I did for my front piece. I've gone ahead to mark my shoulder to my chest line, my shoulder to my bust line, my shoulder to my waist. At the back, I have 15 inches. Then my shoulder to my hip line, which is 7 inches from the waistline, and then the length of my dress. So to get rid of our zipper bulge and make it well fitted on the waistline, I'm going to come inward by 1 inch at this point, which is the waistline, and then I will slant it to the center back and also to the hip line. And after that, I will go ahead and cut it off. So from this top part, I'm going to start marking my 1 inch for my zipper allowance, and then I'll go ahead to connect my points. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to mark my shoulder measurements divided by 2. And for my neck width, I'm going to mark 3 inches, then 1 inch for my neck depth. And after that, I will come down 1 inch for my shoulder slants. then connect my point before going ahead to mark the back armhole curve, just the way I did for the front piece. And now I've done that, and I've also added my sewing allowance. So the next thing I'm going ahead to do is to mark my waist circumference divided by 4 plus my sewing allowance, then my hip circumference divided by 4 plus my sewing allowance. And I also added my 1.5 inches just like I did for the front piece, but go ahead and add just 1 inch. And then on the hemline, I minus 1 inch from what I marked on the hip line before going ahead to connect my point. And that is it for the back pattern. So I will do that, then cut out my back pattern. So when I was done with that, this is what I have. Now looking at this pattern, you will see that the front and the back are not the same length, but by the time I'm going to stitch down the bust dart, both of them will align both at the waistline, the hip line, and then the armhole curve. Now I'm going to go ahead now and place it on my fabric, then cut it out. So this is it. I have done that, but before I remove my pattern, I'm going to trace out my bust dart. So go ahead and trace out your dart whichever way you're comfortable with, and after that I'm going to set it aside and cut out my front facing. Then another thing was to add extra 4 inches to my length. So this is actually optional, just depend on how long you want your dress to be. So this is a piece of fabric I'm going to be using for my facing. I'm just going ahead to place it on a fold because my main piece is already on a fold, and for the length I have about 11 inches. So I'm going to place it together, then I'll align the center front. So I'm just going ahead to trace out the neckline, and then on the shoulder line I'm going to mark 3 inches. And also don't forget to trace out your slit and make it as tiny as possible, just like I said before. And then from the 3 inches I'm going to connect to this point, then go ahead to cut it out. So after cutting my facing, can you see how small my slit is? So try and make it as small as possible, just like this. Now I'm going to remove my pin, then I will place my facing together with my front piece with the right side facing each other. So I'm going to stitch from the neckline down to this slit, then down to this point. And also make sure that your shoulder slant on your main piece is matching together with your shoulder slant on your facing. And I've also gone ahead to pin down my bust dart, and I'll also be stitching it down. So this is my back piece. I've also gone ahead to cut it out. So the next thing I'm going ahead to do is to cut my facing, and this is the piece I'm going to be using. And here I'm just going ahead to place it on a fold because I'm going to be cutting for the 2 back piece. And for the length I have about 6 inches, so I'll go ahead and pin them together, cut through the sides, the neckline, and then the shoulder slant. So at this point I'm going to mark 5 inches, and then at the shoulder slants I'm going to mark 3 inches. Just make sure that the shoulder slants of the back facing is matching together with the shoulder slants of the front facing. After that I'll go ahead and cut it out. So I'll place each side of my facing together with the right side facing each other, then I will take it to the sewing machine and I'll stitch the neckline down. So I'll go ahead and do that, then I'll show you what next to do. So this is the front facing. I've gone ahead to stitch it down. So I'll notch it all around just to make sure that the front part and the slit is well relaxed. So make sure you carefully do this so that you don't cut through your thread. So after doing that, I'm going to flip it to the wrong side, then I'll go ahead and press it down with my pressing iron. So after doing that, this is what I have. And for the back piece, I've also stitched down the facing. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to place them together right side facing each other, and I will join them at the shoulder line. So the way I'm going to do that is that I'm going to place the right side of the front shoulder together with the right side of the back shoulder, just like this, making sure that both of them align properly. And then I will also align the facing together. So after doing that, I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and I'll stitch it down with 1/2 inch. And I'm also going to be doing the same thing for the other side. So I'll join them together also with the right side facing each other and making sure that the facing also align. So after doing that, this is what I have, and you can see how neat it is both on the wrong side and on the right side. So the next thing we are going to be doing is to cut out our sleeve. So here I have about 2 pieces of fabric which I'm going to be using for my 2 sleeve. So on a fold I have about 14 inches, and for the length I have 25 inches. My normal sleeve length is 23 inches, but because it's a best sleeve, I decided to add extra 2 inches. You can even make it 6 or 27 inches, just depend on how lengthy you want your sleeve to be. So from the top part I marked 4.5 inches, which is my calf's height. Then I went ahead to draw a straight line across. So at this point I marked my armhole measurement divided by 2. So I connected it just like this. So from the center point, I'm going to use my free hand to curve to that point, and that's going to give me my sleeve curve. So I went ahead to measure what I have on the pattern. You can measure your main piece if that's what you want. It is still going to give you the same thing. So what I have here is 11 inches. So on my sleeve I'll also make sure I have 11 inches. So when I've done that, I'm going to connect from the 11 inches to the hemline. But at this point I'm going to curve in just a little bit, just like this, just to make it somehow fitted around the armhole before going ahead to connect to the hemline. So make sure that this point is a little curvy, just like this, before going ahead to cut out my sleeve. So after doing that, I'm going to notch the center point of my sleeve. Then I'll go ahead to attach it to my main piece. So this is it. I'm going to pin the center point of my sleeve together with the center point of my working piece, and then I will pin it all around just to make sure that everything aligns perfectly. So when I've done that, I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and stitch it down, and I'm going to be doing the same thing for the other side. And so after doing that, this is what I have. You can see how neat it is. And for the zipper allowance, I've gone ahead to stitch it down, but you can decide to add your zipper at this point. So the way we are going to do it is that we are going to place our zipper just like this, with the right side of our zipper facing the right side of our fabric, just the normal way we attach our zipper. The only difference is that we are going to be sandwiching the zipper between the facing and the main piece. If you need a detailed video on that, you can go ahead and drop it in the comment section, and I will find a time to make the video. So the next thing I'm going to do is to hem my sleeves. So I'm going to fold in 1/2 inch and then another 1/2 inch. So after doing that, I'm going to start joining them together from the sleeve down to the shoulder, then down to the side seam. But then if you want it to appear firmer, you can decide to attach a boning by the side from the waistline down to the hip line, but I'm going to be leaving mine this way. So after that, I'll go ahead and hem the lower part. I'll fold in 1/2 inch and then I'll fold in another 1/2 inch, and that is it, guys. If you know you find this video useful, please don't go without giving this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. Put on your post notification bell so that whenever there is a new video up on the channel, you will be notified. So until I see you in my next video, stay blessed.